I'm here with Chris, and she has a really interesting history. So I'd like her to tell us a little bit about how she got started in this, in art and in this assemblage.
Okay, so when I came to the Antelope Valley in 1991, I started at Desert Winds High School. And immediately, because I was focusing on sculpture when I was getting my art credentials, we hit it hard. And we had so much fun making assemblages and sculptures at Desert Winds. But then when I transferred to Lancaster High School, I started teaching AP Studio Art. And I had collected stuff from my grandparents. My grandfather had been in World War II, and I had some interesting, precious objects from them. And so I thought, you know, I need to model the behavior. So I started a body of work for my students, and it took off, and I had so much fun with it, and I couldn't stop. So then in 2000, I went to CSUN to get a master's, and I got it in assemblage. And then when that was over, I'd been painting with Glenn Knowles at the college in his group. And so 2002 is when I started a body of work of Joshua trees. So now I have fun doing both. And your group is going to be able to see a 100-foot wall in our backyard. And it started out as a joke. My friends were going to put, you know, flowers up on the wall. And I just finished it. You know, and it took 20 years, but it's like a 100-foot wall. So
100-foot wall of
yeah.
That's exciting. Well,
yes.
So prior to coming to the Antelope Valley, you were up in Northern California?
Yes, I was misguided, misdirected, and I kind of like floated through life. So I left one of the best schools for teacher training, which was Chico State, and I transferred to one of the worst, Humboldt State. And it's because I wanted to live in the redwoods where it's nice and lush and green and beautiful. But God has a sense of humor, and He sent me to the desert to teach. And so we were living on an Indian reservation at the time. That's where I got my student teaching done. And I had some long-term sub jobs there. And we were living the dream. And so when I got the call to work out in the desert, it was either live where it's gorgeous and teach the little guys, because I got a multiple subjects credential, or come live in the desert and teach your passion, which was art. So the desert went out over the redwoods.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer almost.
Yeah, it worked out.
That's great. And you're also going to be talking a little bit, or someone is going to be talking a little bit about this house that you built, I understand, tonight.
Yeah, Dave and I took a bunch of blueprints and we scabbed them together based upon what we had seen. My cousin has an open floor plan, and we did a lot of hosting with the different churches we attended to. Mostly in this house, it was the Spanish ministries. And so we wanted a house that had an open floor plan for entertaining. And so we had fun putting it together, and it was just sort of like a vision that we had. And it all worked out. So,
well, we're excited that we're going to be seeing a little bit later on some slides that I understand are of the construction of this house. Luckily, I was teaching AP Studio Art, so I was taking a lot of slides for the kids, and it just so happened that I had, you know, a camera with slide film at the time that the construction took place, and so I took pictures of the house that was wrapped with plywood because someone was like, you're an artist, you need to paint the walls. And so those are the slides I'll be sharing. Oh, that'll be great. So we get to see what's under the current stucco. Okay, very good. Well, I'm excited.
Before I take you on a tour around the house and the slide presentation to introduce myself as an artist, I'd like to quickly introduce myself as a teacher. So this portfolio are public projects I got to do with students. And this is up at a sickle cell camp up in Washington, and some of my Lancaster High School kids got to go with me. Go ahead. And when I first started teaching, I was at Desert Winds Continuation. And one of the things I found out was they thought they were the bad kids. And so I wanted to dispel that thought by making piñatas and going to the elementary schools and let them break into the piñatas with the little guys. And it worked. It was really beautiful. So then when I switched over in '94 to Lancaster High School, I found out that the high school kids were teasing the TMJ kids, trainably mentally handicapped. I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, and so what I thought, well, we're just going to do piñatas again. So the art kids made piñatas. We filled them with candy, and then we took them out to the quad areas, and we let the handicapped kids break into them, and that seemed to help. This is when I got my master's. I won a little competition to do an installation in Northridge, but in order to make that work, because I was a teacher, I invited my students to help me do the installation. So you'll see students working on that project in these photos. Okay, go ahead. And then there was a coffee shop out on Lancaster Boulevard called Java something, Java. Anyway, it was cool. And they invited us to do an art show. So we had live music, we painted the windows, we hung art, we did murals. And back in the 1990s, somebody got on the internet and did an article on us, and we didn't even know about it. So one of my kids printed that out for me. It was pretty nice surprise. Okay, keep going. And then Julian, back here, he's a volunteer. He graduated at Lancaster High School, and then when he was looking at my portfolio, he recognized a very large mosaic mural of an American flag. And so I was happy because there's 3 campuses that have the exact same setup. But so Jamie Goodrow did Pride of the Nations, and we'd always help her with patriotic art. Okay, go ahead. And if you drive past the school, you'll see this very large sculpture in front of the school, and my students and I did that with the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Kids. Keep going. And then one year, a couple of my students and I got to paint murals for the Poppy Festival, and then these are some more murals that we did at Lancaster. Okay, keep going. And we volunteered at the old folks home, and then we learned how to mosaic up on the balcony up at Lancaster High School. Together. And then I got to do a painted antelope and a mosaic antelope for the city of Lancaster. And then this is some more murals at Lancaster. And then Cedar Center could not get any of the high schools to put shows up, so they called me and said, will you please put a show up? So while I was teaching AP Studio Art, I got my kids together and we did a nice show for them. And then after a student graduated, Matthew Keltner, I got called at the base. The EOD wanted a mural done, and I didn't really have time, but I had a wonderful student who did these beautiful flags. So I said, Matthew, there was a whole miracle wrapped around this story, but I'll just say Matthew did it. I called him up and he said, I work at the base. I was like, oh, good. So he did it, and it turned out beautiful. And then those are murals done at RX Paris. That's where I finished my career. I finished in continuation. And at MOA, we took some first place best of shows. And for the city of Lancaster, we yarn bombed City Hall, and it was quite a big deal. And then we did mosaics for Lancaster City's community garden on Elm Avenue, their water fountain, their pizza oven, and stepping stones. And then MOA wanted us to do an installation on the rooftop, so we gathered rusted cans out here in the desert. We did Joshua trees, and then we did murals on Lancaster Boulevard with powwow. Thank you, Larry. Okay, now you're on.
Okay. Yes. We have a few announcements that I need to make. Most of you have already been trapped by Lori when you came in and reminded that your dues are due. As of the end of this month, that's the end of our fiscal year. We do have some work days planned in my barn next Monday, Monday the 1st at 8 o'clock. We're going to be doing things like inventorying the books, trying to get an idea of what all I have and where it is, because I should not be the only one who knows where things are. Other people need to know where some of the things that belong to the Historical Society are. So 8 o'clock, probably for maybe 2-3 hours, depending on how hot it is. And then the following Monday, we're also going to do 8 o'clock in my barn and in my house, because I have I have things everywhere. And we need to just log the location of these items. I also wanted to tell you that our September meeting is going to be back in the library, same time. We've already paid for the use of the library. They're very reasonable. So we've already done that for all of the meetings for our next fiscal year. I believe that our October meeting per Siobhan is going to be at the ranch, and then we'll be back in the library until we get to our December meeting. So before it gets dark, Chris is going to take you of a tour outside. We already have this on video. Mac and I came out during the day when the light was good, so we have it on video, and it will be part of our YouTube when we get it all put together.
Okay.
But Chris, do you want them to go out this way? Or
We're going to go out that door.
we're going to go out that door?
Yes.
Tell us about this.
So basically how this all started was my grandfather was in World War II, and he collected objects from around the world. And when they died, I was in high school casting metal, and my dad gave me all this metals, chain, memorabilia to melt. And I was like, no way. This stuff is so precious, and it's all I have left of him. And so what it started, a body of work called assemblage. Assemblage is just where you take found objects and you make sculptures. And so when I started to do mosaic work, I was working found objects into my mosaic. And so it's very dimensional. It's not just flat. So if you look at this Joshua tree, you'll see there's knives, spoons, mirrors, a mannequin, and all kinds of weird objects. Underneath the mosaic, there's a painting, because while we were building the house, everybody said, oh, you're an artist, you need to paint murals. And so when it was wrapped in plywood, I knew it would be temporary, but we painted every side of the house, inside and out, in watercolors and scripture. And so underneath this is a watercolor of a Joshua tree. So I asked my husband, honey, when we finish the house and I get stuck up, can I mosaic a Joshua tree? And he said, sure. So.
Well, that's neat.
So this entire wall started out kind of tongue-in-cheek. I invited friends to come over and put flowers, because when we built the house, there was nothing but dirt. So I thought, well, I'll have a flower garden on my wall. So after my friends put up their flowers, I started putting background imagery on. And I always wanted a koi pond. And then we found out how much work and how much money. So instead, I mosaicked a koi pond. And through a series of blessings, we got some very unusual pieces from my sister in Seattle, from two companies, really exclusive companies that, you know, had inventory that they needed to offload. So it's been a lifetime of collection, and the wall took about 15 years to complete. So the stairwell is got mostly slate on it, but the tile pieces that are in that location, much of it is from the 1908 earthquake in San Francisco. I got a hold of a lady that was collecting pieces in Hayward, stuff that washed up off the shore after they bulldozed everything into the bay. And so, not on the vertical stair steps, but on the the horizontal places, you'll see pieces from real highly recognizable, a lot of like blue willow and pottery from Asia. So when you see it, you'll understand. Close up. Here you can see the transition is happening from flowers, and then down here we've got hot air balloons. And so during COVID, when I was doing distance learning, most of this wall was completed at that time. And so my vision was for the kids to be able to take a field trip and help me with the hot air balloons, but that didn't work out, and I ended up doing it with some friends. So I do a lot of experimentation, and so if something doesn't turn out, I don't feel bad. I take a hammer and a chisel, and I'll chip away at an area that needs to be redone, and 9 times out of 10 it comes out better when I make repairs. So I don't feel bad if a piece falls off or needs to be replaced. Again, you'll see a lot of dimensional pieces here. I've made adjustments. I tried to put light grout in the clouds. It didn't really work, so I grouted over it kind of to match. Predominantly there's a dark grout going throughout the whole wall. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Lori Cruz, who did the pink hot air balloon, and Andrea Kraft, who did the purple. It's a little dusty because I've been doing some repair work on it, but by the time that we have our event, I'm going to hose down the wall and it should be nice and sparkling, shining for the event. When we built this house, we had a lot of leftover tile from our last house. This was from a pool, and the slate is from this house. But my cousin's husband, they lived abroad for most of his career. He worked for ExxonMobil, and these round tiles came from a mosque, and he told me they're like 400 years old. And so I built the design around these 5 tiles that you see. These are from Portugal, and they're at least vintage, if not antique. The spikes are from Washington, and then the glass is from Washington. And my husband helped me do it. Let's see if this can come up. And there you go. So you can get a better look at that. Okay, so this, as you can tell, is a continuation of the mosaic on the fireplace, where you have our leftover travertine that I was working with in the spikes that came from Seattle. And so every other tile, there's a little vignette, and it harkens back to that assemblage approach that I use in my mosaic. And so here you have a collection of shells, 30 pieces or coins, some ceramic from the ocean with a blue squirrel, round marbles and discs, keys, a vintage vase, a cross with a background, stones, an assemblage with chain, a rock. Those are actually buttons in a vintage silver salt shaker, and then bullets. And some of the rocks that you guys are going to be receiving from collected out here on out in the desert. But I'm going to have them turn these lights off. Hey babe, can we turn these lights off?
I'll get it.
Thank you. Dave and I moved to the Antelope Valley in 1991. We came from Hoopa, and I was able to teach for the Antelope Valley Union High School District for 35 years. It wasn't until we moved to Rosamond in 2004 that I fell in love with the desert, the wide open spaces, and just the beauty of the desert. It took a while for me to become acclimatized, like about a decade. I was born in '63, raised in Silicon Valley, and my grandparents went through the Depression, and I would listen to their stories. Oftentimes I'll say I was a product of the Depression, but people who are paying attention to the year I was born say that's impossible. They just had a big impact on me, and I paid attention. My grandfather was in World War II,
and the Korean War, and they traveled quite a bit and collected lots of antiques and interesting items. So when I was in high school, probably a combination of bipolar and PTSD, he took his own life and he took my grandmother's life. So when they auctioned off all the items, my father gave me a pile of metal, chains and medals from the war, broken jewelry, and told me to go ahead and melt them all down because I was casting jewelry in high school, but everything had a story to it and I couldn't do it. So I went to Chico State because they had a foundry, and I melted metal on a larger scale. So when I came to the Antelope Valley to teach, I got to meet Glenn Knowles, and I was able to do some plein air work for over a decade with his group. It wasn't until I got my master's at CSUN in 2002 that I started a body of work on Joshua trees. So I've been doing them now for over 25 years. And this is just one slide because this focus of this slide presentation has to do with my master's. I put this together for my students, and so you will only see one slide of 25 years worth of work. So go ahead and forward it, Dave. And this is just a study of an orange on a vintage cloth. I guess the vintage is a little bit of a hint to all things old that I'm attracted to, which you will see in my body of assemblage. Okay, forward please. And to start off the slideshow, I like to give the kids full disclosure about what I do, where I come from. And again, Glenn Knowles was a big influence at the college. That's his palette he designed. It's a watercolor palette. And when my friends in Spanish ministry said, you need to paint your walls, because we were building this house out here in Rosamond in 02 or 03 or ish, they said, you need to paint murals on those plywood walls. So I thought, well, let's do watercolor, because the watercolor medium is transparent. You get to see the wood and its knots and its beauty. And so it was fun and it was whimsical, and I decided to also incorporate Psalms. Okay, forward please. That's the wall in our garage. Forward. And that's a close-up. You can see some of the verses written there. Okay, forward please. And on the side of the house where I painted this Joshua tree real quick in watercolor, I asked Dave, so what do you think about having a mosaic tree once the house is stuccoed? And he said, sure. So I know that you'll be able to see images of that Mac took for us. So there's a mosaic Joshua tree on that location. Okay, forward please. And if you ever get the chance to visit Wayside Church in Rosamond, they have like an 18-foot mosaic mural in their entryway, because they wanted me to do something. They wanted me to paint a mural, but I said, I see a mosaic here, and they let me do it. And so when we were at Central, they wanted me to paint them something original for a performance piece during a service. And so I came up with this little logo of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the Father is represented in the Son, the giver of all life. The red cross in the center represents Jesus, and then the dove represents the Holy Spirit. Okay, forward please. And here you can see a close-up of Psalms 34 written around the dove. Forward please. And this is an image on the inside of the house. Forward. With the close-up so you can see the scripture written in Sharpie. Forward. And when the kids showed up from Spanish ministry, I handed them all Sharpies and said, have fun. And they did. So when I put the slideshow together for my students at Lancaster, I just grabbed one picture of a pile of children's work. And I didn't know which one I was picking. And so when I put the slideshow together, this one took my breath away, because he was tragically killed in an accident shortly after this image was taken. And so the body of my work points to the brevity of life. So I just sort of decided to keep it there. and be really honest with the kids about the meaning of my assemblage work. Okay, forward please. So this piece I got to trade with Sal Vasquez. He's a wonderful artist in that valley who would go out on location with Glenn's group, and he liked it because everything in there are Hispanic items, and his heritage is Hispanic. Okay, forward please. And then when we lived on the reservation, I was able to collect, well, I always collected jewelry, and this necklace is made with the old Dentillium shell, which was their form of currency back in the day. And so I combined kind of like 3 items. The Coca-Cola can represents like capitalism to me, monetary, you know, consumerism. And it's vintage, which I like. And then the poker chips represent casinos, and it kind of harkens back to money back in the day and money today. And there's both sides of the coin of the argument, you know, another addiction for some people, but then a way to make money as we take away privileges and mineral rights and land. And so it's sort of like an ongoing debate, and it's not an easy thing to reconcile. Okay, forward please. And these are worry dolls from Guatemala, surrounded by a vintage necklace made of bakelite. Forward. And when I was a teacher, one of the things that would really bother me was the students not taking proper care of the brushes. And so to alleviate that stress, I decided, okay, when a brush is no longer, I can't wash it with chemicals and bring it back, I'll turn it into art. So this is just a sort of a playful piece with paintbrushes, worry dolls, and marbles. And the message is basically there should be a joy in making art. Okay, forward please. And this is one of my earliest pieces. I mentioned that when my grandparents died, I got bits of jewelry and coin and metals. And so the assemblage started with the pieces from them. And so this little can, it's the top of a can, and coins and a clock face. This is one of the earliest pieces, and most all those pieces came from the grandparents. Okay, forward please. And this is another one of the marbles and brushes from the students. I did a whole series of these. Okay, forward please. And when I was getting my master's at CSUN, Kim Abelies was saying to me, you need to speed up your production, and I would like you to make 1 per day. And so I had a lot of clock parts, and I did a body of work that I absolutely love. But I was using old paint, vintage paint that was, you know, collected. Unfortunately, it's oil, so it took years for these things to dry. I should have been using acrylic. Okay, forward. And this is another one of those clock pieces. Tony Sanchez owns this. He lives in Spain right now. Forward, please. And this is one of the pieces that was hanging for my master's show. They're men that are musicians holding their instruments, and so under the piece is hanging a flute, and it's on a mirror so that you can see your own reflection. And the way I arranged the copper printing plates and the lead-based plates was to kind of mimic tombstones, and again looking at our own mortality, thinking about that. I think that's when you live your best life. Forward. And then when my aunt died, my father's sister, again I was given a lot of jewelry, and we weren't going to wear any of it. It's just out of style. So I decided to make plates for the nieces and nephews. We have 1 nephew, Jordan, and then 3 nieces, and so the 4 plates were designed to just give their parents, and then someday they would have them. But that's Jordan and Megan. Forward, please. And then Erica and Alyssa. Forward. That's a close-up. Forward. And this was an old mirror that was broken and gone, and so I used the handle as a canvas to construct a small assemblage. Forward. And this is a full-size tuba that was given to me, and the person that was able to read this piece and understand it happened to be a pastor who was bilingual. Everything, the words that are going in the mouth of the tuba are followed by chain that are real, gold and silver, and it's red lettering, and it's Jesus saying it's not what goes into man that corrupts him, it's what comes out. And so coming out of the tuba, you have 5 little rivers of, junk jewelry and broken mirrors and just stuff that like catches your eye, all the glitters. But along with them are 5 verses from the Bible that talk about hurting people's feelings through gossip and being dishonest and stuff like that. Okay, forward. And that's a close-up. Forward. And this piece was dedicated to the book of Ecclesiastes, when at the end of Solomon's life, after he had accumulated very much fame and wealth, knowledge, he was asking, okay, what's the point? So just the basic message is, that material wealth cannot bring happiness. Forward. And that's a close-up. Forward. And then this is my 20th century serpent. The title of this piece is Surely You'll Not Die. Those are the words that he used. And so I decided to make the serpent, again, with a theme, out of all that costume jewelry. When he was in my arms, he was very supple. He actually moved like a snake until I, tied him down to the base. Anyway, so that apple was there very temporary, and it dried up. You'll see it in the next slide. Go ahead and forward. And this is after the apple dried. Forward. And I had a professor at CSUN that liked the tuba and liked my body of work, and she told me that this French horn had traveled with her throughout the States. She had it for a very, very long time, and she wanted me to make a piece of art out of it, so I did. Forward. And this is another early piece where everything that's collected here was from the grandparents. And I love telling the kids that the base is an ashtray from a car, because back in the day, all cars had ashtrays. So, forward. And this is one of my favorite pieces, Daniel in the Lion's Den. Forward. And this piece, my friend, a co-teacher at Lancaster, bought. And it was funny because she's way, way not a believer. And I like to tell the story about finding this deck of cards at a garage sale, because I almost left because all the stuff at the garage sale was new. But then I saw the deck of cards with French writing on them, and I knew there would be devils in the pack. And that's probably just being familiar with all my grandparents' antiques. And sure enough, if you got to see a close-up of that little devil, he has very sharp ears, and the little round circles on the cards are pentagrams. So I saved that, and when people would visit my studio and ask me, what are you doing with these? I tell them it's okay, it's going to turn into art someday. And so on the little red poker chips are symbols of religion from around the world, and the verse reads on the face of the cards that says, oh, you believe there's one God? Good for you. Even the demons know that, yet they're smart enough to shudder. I'm extending the verse, but that's basically the gist of the meaning. And so it puts a good spin on a very dark piece. Okay, forward please. And this piece just has to do with joy, with the glass bubbles and the mirrors on the tray, and those long gold bubbles that with the sharp points are from Japan, and they're Murano glass. And we like to collect a lot of that stuff because my grandparents had a lot of that on their tree at the holidays. Okay, forward. And this piece has a picture of Tippi Hedren from the movie The Birds, and the images of the broken mirrors feel like birds, and the tray actually has birds. And back at this time when we were living in Quartz Hill, I would let the my Moluccan cockatoo hang out in the studio with me. And when I wasn't watching, he got off his perch, he walked over, I was working on the ground, and he picked up a chain and he dropped it. And so I left it where he dropped it, and this is the only piece that my bird helped me with. Forward. And these pieces have to do, again, with the brevity of life, how time flees by, and so you could get that feeling with the broken glass and the clock faces, and there are scriptures on each one that indicate that meaning. Okay, forward. Forward. And this is the last slide. I studied science, which was practical when I was going to be a teacher, before I went for a flight of fancy and majored in the arts and took a chance and lived happily ever after. So, the end. If you want to come back and get plants, starters, a friend of ours that was an artist, he started, all our landscaping came from Jerry Strangio. So if anybody wants to come back and get baby plants or starters, you're all welcome, invited. So,
We need to give Chris a big round of applause. This was amazing, and we're very honored that you allowed us to come into your home, see your studio, see your artwork, and this has been, I think, just really a special program, and we're glad that we are videoing it so we can put it out there so others can share.
and if you didn't get a bottle of rocks, if you came a little late, you can go out to the studio. In the windows, you'll see little bottles of rocks. I collected them on walks out here because found a place where I think the Native Americans were making arrowheads. So it started that way with, broken glass and bullet casings. So make sure you get a bottle of rocks.